For many of us, myself included, being lean is ideal. It means being healthy, having higher energy levels, and is aesthetically pleasing to boot, especially when combined with having a solid foundation of muscle. The process of getting lean through accomplishing fat loss, however, gets people a lot less excited than the result that it leads to. It's a process that many people fail to follow through with, not because they don't have the desire to accomplish the goal, but because a series of common yet catastrophic mistakes are often unknowingly made along the way. Mistakes that lead many hopeful people to fall off the wagon and stay off the wagon before ever accomplishing their fat loss goals. In this video, while showing you footage from my latest full body gym workout, I'm going to share with you what are the 3 worst of these catastrophic mistakes when it comes to accomplishing fat loss, and what you can do instead that you experience smooth sailing to accomplishing your fat loss goals. Before we get started, if you find this video to be helpful, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. Okay, let's dive in. Nowadays, most of us know that in order to lose fat, even if we're not very familiar with the specific science of it, we need to eat fewer calories. As a broad summary, that's how fat loss works. You consume fewer calories than your body uses, and the byproduct is that the body will overall lose energy in the form of body fat. That's what it means to be in a caloric deficit, terminology that most people seem to be informed about nowadays. The first mistake I'm going to warn you of is not that many people unknowingly are eating at their maintenance or even a surplus when they think they're in a deficit, even though that is a mistake many people make. The mistake I'm going to warn you of is of a different breed. It's to set yourself in too much of a deficit, to be too aggressive with the amount of calories you cut out. Oftentimes, this comes from a place of just not knowing. If you want to lose fat, you need to cut calories. So why not cut them a lot? That would mean losing fat faster, won't it? Or sometimes people cut calories too aggressively simply because they're unaware of the calorie content in the food they're cutting out. For example, they might suddenly cut out entire food groups that inadvertently lead them eating far fewer calories than they realize they are. And other times, people cut calories too aggressively simply because they're extremely motivated to lose fat. The question is, why is being in an aggressive deficit a mistake? Well, a few reasons. First, it means running into dietary burnout fast. Being in a deficit that's too excessive might be sustainable for a week for some, maybe a few weeks for others, and perhaps slightly longer for others. But inevitably, for 99% of people, becoming overcome by massive amounts of hunger, cravings, food focus, mood, irritability, and poor sleep will naturally lead to falling off the wagon. Yes, you'll lose fat faster than being in a more conservative, less extreme deficit, but most people won't be able to stay in the deficit for long before falling off, long before accomplishing their fat loss goal when in too aggressive of a deficit. The second reason is because being in too aggressive of a deficit means probably losing muscle. A more extreme deficit means the body is going to react in a more extreme way. Yes, it means losing overall energy faster, but it also means losing energy from more than just body fat. It means losing it in the form of muscle too. And that's probably not ideal, right? And the third reason being in an aggressive deficit is a mistake is because it doesn't take into account how to stay lean once you initially lose your desired amount of body fat. If the deficit is excessive and you manage to endure it for long enough to lose a big chunk of fat, what will you do to keep the fat off? See, most people who get to that point will revert to past eating habits, the same ones that led them to gaining fat in the first place, and then, of course, gain all of the body fat back quickly. If the means in which you lose the fat is not sustainable for the long term, how can you expect to keep your results? No, for almost everyone, an aggressive deficit is not a good idea, with the exception of very few well-informed and skilled individuals who have a very solid understanding of how and when to incorporate a more aggressive approach. But again, the vast majority of the population doesn't fall into this category or circumstance. Rather, being in a more conservative deficit that you can sustain yet still see predictable results from probably is. As for the exact amount of deficit that's ideal, that will vary from individual to individual based on their current body composition and skill within diet and exercise. But as a very generalized rule, aiming to lose 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per week on average is probably ideal. Maybe a bit more or less per person depending on their exact context. That window is conservative enough for most people to sustain for months, as long as their food selection and their meal combinations are satiating. But it's large enough to still see very predictable results from. And then there's the added bonus that it's not likely to lead to any muscle loss, as long as there isn't training done or activity done in an excess that can't be recovered from. As to how much of a deficit that is, again, that's going to depend on the person, but eating somewhere around 500 calories under your maintenance per day is a good starting place. The second big mistake when it comes to accomplishing fat loss is including an excess of activity or exercise in your routine. Yes, the amount of energy you burn through exercise and activity can play a very helpful role in getting and staying in a deficit. And some amount of it probably should be included in your routine for best results. As far as exercise goes, strength training is probably ideal, since it means stimulating for muscle growth and muscle retention in addition to burning some extra calories. Walking is fantastic too, since it's very low stress and it involves burning a few extra calories through a means that's very non-invasive. The mistake lies in including too much activity or exercise. From what I've seen, people do this for a few different reasons. First, some people might do it because it simply means burning extra calories. This might seem to make logical sense, since if you want to lose fat fast, wouldn't you want to burn extra calories? Second, some people might do it as a means of burning off the extra calories eaten from their diet. Oftentimes this is done as a reactionary approach to eating extra calories from cheat meals or high-calorie snacks or treats. This might seem to make logical sense at first glance too. And third, some people might do it as a sole means of getting and staying in a deficit, aiming to do tons of activity for the purposes of being able to bypass having to change their diet at all. This might be called out-training a bad diet in some circumstances. Again, it might seem to make logical sense on paper. Including too much activity is a mistake, though. Why? Well, first, because if it's your primary means of being in a deficit, or if it heavily contributes in a combination with your dietary approach, and it is not sustainable for the long term, how can you expect to keep your results once you initially get them? Will you be able to uphold tons of cardio in your routine? Extra gym workouts, hours and hours of walking? Probably not. And second, because oftentimes, particularly in the case of using high activity levels to offset cheat meals or a high calorie diet in general, it just won't work. Most people don't realize just how many calories they would need to burn off to offset a high calorie diet, and also don't realize how much exercise they would need to do to burn that number of calories. Oftentimes, the amount of exercise needed would be flat out impossible to include. Not just from the perspective of the human body being able to handle that much activity or exercise, but because time simply would not permit it. You just wouldn't have enough time. Putting pressure on yourself to do a high amount of exercise and activity can be extremely physically and mentally stressful too. As mentioned earlier, however, some amount of activity and exercise, a sustainable amount, is highly advisable when it comes to accomplishing fat loss. Again, including at least several sessions of something like strength training per week to stimulate for muscle growth and muscle retention is probably fantastic for most people, since it means contributing to burning calories a bit, yes, but perhaps more importantly, because it leads to building and retaining muscle. And going for daily walks is also highly recommended to burn a few more calories throughout the day in a way that's non-invasive or stressful. The real key is to include as much activity and exercise that is helpful for fat loss, but that is also sustainable. Something that might challenge you a bit, sure, but something you can stick with ideally for the long term. The third catastrophic mistake people make when it comes to accomplishing fat loss doesn't revolve around the tactics of fat loss, like the first two mistakes mentioned were. No, it revolves around mindset. Many people look at fat loss with a sense of dread. It means being hungry. It means being restricted. It means having to give things up. And it means having to undergo a process that must simply be suffered through, one that must simply be endured. See, that's the mistake though. Going into a fat loss journey with the mindset of, I just need to suffer through it. The most successful people who get lean and stay lean don't think of it like that. Or at least, I'll speak for myself and say that I certainly don't. The mindset I adopt is not, how can I suffer through it? It's, how can I make the process as enjoyable and satisfying for myself as possible? Instead of picking my meals and food selection with the intention of just being able to endure them, I picked them with the intention of them being as tasty, satisfying, and satiating or filling as possible. And same idea with my training. I don't think of exercise as something that I just have to be able to survive or struggle through. I think of it as a rewarding and satisfying challenge. See, by approaching the fat loss journey through a means of intending to find enjoyment from the process, it actually makes the process significantly easier. After all, what kind of an approach sounds more appealing? One that requires you to just suffer through it, or one that leaves you finding enjoyment from it? Definitely the former. And the good news is that can be done. Again, it's the approach I always take for myself, and it's what I help my clients to enact for themselves as well. And there you have it. 3 of the worst, most catastrophic mistakes that people fall into making when it comes to accomplishing fat loss, and what you can do instead of making those mistakes. At this point, I'd love to know your feedback. Let me know your insights, thoughts, and questions in the comment section below. Before this video comes to a close, I want to quickly let you know about the work that I do. When I'm not making YouTube videos or Instagram content, I work full-time as an online physique coach, where I help my clients to accomplish their muscle growth and fat loss goals by optimizing their approach to strength training and nutrition. And I coach them through the process. I've been doing this work for over 7 years and love helping my clients to not only transform their bodies, but ultimately their lives. If you've been considering getting some help with accomplishing your own physique goals, feel free to hit the link in the description below, where you can learn a little bit more about the work that I do and how I can help you. You can even use that link to schedule a free video consultation with me. If you have any questions about my coaching or how I can help you, just email me at sam@jadeathletics.ca. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.